Interlude, Chimpland. The thick sounds of the Gombe Mountains. Jane follows a chimp through the forest. When the chimp spots her, she freezes and looks somewhere else, pretending to be disinterested. When the chimp looks away, Jane begins to follow again. She is slow, calm, and utterly unafraid. Her hair is tied in a low ponytail. She has black and white sneakers on. The chimp spots her again. She sits down. She grooms herself and looks the other way. She sees that the chimp is still suspicious. She lies down and pretends to be asleep. The chimp ignores her. She opens one eye. She smiles. Slowly, she takes out her notebook. She starts taking notes. Especially when listening to it on my own, I was really compelled by the way that I could track the movement of the monkey, and that for me manifested in like I heard it in one earphone and then I heard it in a different earphone, and I thought that that was really a really cool way to track that movement.
Yeah, I mean that was just the particular challenge of this interlude is differentiating the chimp from Jane, and it not only spatially, kind of giving this sense of the two of them are in the same area but separated, but also thinking of how a chimp might move versus how a human might move.
Totally.
I mean, so you hear something on your left hand side, and then you hear something on your right hand side, and then it's thinking of the difference in the sound kind of informs you, which one's the chimp and which one's the person. Like the right hand side sounds a little bit more like a step, like a specific kind of a controlled movement, whereas the left hand side, the movement is a little bit uncontrolled, a little clumsy, and so it kind of leads you to assume that could be the chimp.
Yeah, and that's something that definitely stuck out to me as very successful.
That you very successfully took me to the Gombe and to this space, the mountains, and there was this ethereal kind of that pulsation underneath all of our more naturalistic, realistic, I don't know, sounds that we were also experiencing that brought me a lot of peace, and that I felt very present in that space with Jane and the animals, which was really, really magical.
Yeah, I was like Brenna, and I was just floored by the difference between the nature sounds and the pulsing, the kind of the tone of it. And I'm so glad that you did give it a tone. And it reminded me of something Jane talked a lot about, which is how for her being out in nature and in those mountains was like a form of church for her, was a form of religion, and kind of comparing that with the ideas of like monastic silence and that like the kind of the more ethereal, the wooier tones felt really right and really beautiful. Mm-hmm. I also loved how you started with this big blast of sound in the jungle and immediately immersed us in it, and then faded away and then brought it back again at the end. I thought that was a very clever sandwich.
Just thinking geographically about the place. I mean, the Gombe and just the surrounding area is such a huge, jungle that I wanted to kind of start with this overview and kind of zero in where the two were Jane is, and just that sense of like when you're focused on something, when she's focused on the chimp, like kind of the background sort of goes away a bit. Yeah. So I'm glad you noticed that. I think as I was reading, I remember thinking writing a note in terms of like how to clarify that this one person is transforming into this other thing.
Exactly.
So it's starting from a place of naturalism going into the character would be something definitely worth exploring.
Lovely. For us?
Just a quick question. I'm curious, one of the challenges of this particular interlude was that getting the tone of the chimp and what the chimp was feeling, because and like sifting through a lot of different chimp vocalization sounds and picking ones that felt like it was the right what did it feel like other than Jane just watching the chimp? I mean, did you feel like there was some kind of interaction between the two, between Jane and the chimp?
That's a great question. Aurora, did you want to respond to that first?
Yeah, the parts about it that I really liked, I loved the warmth of the chimp voice. I loved the feeling that we were catching the chimp in a really intimate moment, like a moment of grooming, a moment of vulnerability. When the sound matched that felt really right. I actually didn't really feel a need, nor really hear a need for the chimp and Jane to interact with each other. I heard the interaction of like the chimp would speak and Jane would follow. And I loved that impulse. And I would say like lean more into that impulse, because the difference between chimp, like the warmth and the vulnerability of the chimp and the kind of silence of Jane, felt really right for me in establishing the fact that right now she wasn't with the chimp, but she was observing the chimp in a moment of privacy.
Yeah.
And so I think the privacy and the observation, those two words, which are kind of hard to get sonically, I really felt, and I would say you could even lean into more on my end.
My question is about the end, and I want to just know what is the intention with the sound crescendoing again towards the end.
Yeah.
Main question I'm just an interest I have is what kind of research or preparation did you do to find these sounds and tones, like in relation to this region?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I try to be aware of when I'm doing sound design in particular geographic locations is just, a lot of times it's not possible for me to actually go to the place and record sounds myself. So I have to kind of like sift through various libraries and find things that might work. So I just, first thing is I just looked at a map and I looked at where Gombe is, and then that and kind of the surrounding areas of Gombe. And so as I was looking through sounds, if I didn't find exactly, that area specifically, I at least am aware of what's around there. So I think like a lot of the background nature sounds were from Cameroon, which is like just north of Gombe, I think. So like, I want to be as accurate as possible as I can with the wildlife of the region. So, even though it's jungles of South America and jungles of Africa, it's hard to differentiate unless you're an expert. But like, I at least want to feel like I did as much as I can to be accurate. And then just chimpanzee calls. Like there's a lot of recordings out there, and so that was just making sure I found the right tone in the voice of getting this kind of sort of youthful, playful kind of energy in the voice.
That's awesome. Interlude Flight. Jane is falling through space. It is peaceful. The wind rushes around her and lifts her and holds her. Her eyes are closed. She looks like an angel. Maybe there is music. Maybe it is synthetic, of another world. She opens her eyes. She sees what is happening. She sees that she is falling. She screams. She tries desperately hard to stop falling. It's not working. She's falling. She gives in. She falls. But now she is no longer falling. She is flying. Like a bird, like the wind, she relishes the beat of her wings. The air around her is no longer an enemy forcing her down. It lifts her up. It kisses her wind-burnt cheeks. She smiles. Slowly, she morphs. Her body stiffens. It becomes rigid and practiced and businesslike. She is a plane now. She is diligent and on track. Her arms slice the air with economic cruelty. And now she is a plane passenger. She is falling into her seat. She is buckling her seatbelt. She is not smoking. She is reading the instructions on takeoff and landing. She is asking for a glass of ginger ale and eating peanuts and massaging her splitting headache and wishing desperately that she could just get away from it all.
Favorite thing was the way that the tone that you established at the beginning kind of crept in at every part of the interlude and introduced it and then went away and then came back again. And it kind of felt like the tone was our guide for this section. And I love that it unified the whole thing, and it made me feel like it really honored that it was all happening to one person and that every aspect of the fall and the flight were related.
Love this thing, or like, let's go back to what we had before. Because I think what's nice is that with both of these sound cues and like soundscapes, really, they're already, like, for my money, they're already 99% there. So
Sure.
yeah, we're starting at a really good place.
Right.
It's so good.